This House believes that the United States federal government should prohibit the sale of the bump stock for firearms. Being able to turn a traditional one-shot rifle into a machine gun with one simple product is like buying a bunch of ingredients and they just happen to make a bomb, an act of terrorism. Some background information. Federal law defines a machine gun as any weapon which shoots, is designed to shoot, or can be readily restored to shoot automatically more than one shot without manual reloading by a single function of the trigger. This definition includes the frame of receiver, any point or combination of points designed and intended solely and exclusively for use in converting a weapon into a machine gun, and any combination of parts from a machine gun can be assembled. Since 1934, Congress has strictly regulated the manufacture, transfer, and possession of machine guns. The firearms are regulated by the 1934 National Firearms Act and the 1968 Gun Control Act, as amended by the 1986 Firearms Owners Protection Act. The agency responsible for administrating and enforcing federal firearm laws, including the machine gun laws, is the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Until January 24, 2003, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which was within the Treasury Department. The 2002 Homeland Security Act transferred it to the Justice Department and changed its name to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. A bump stock replaces a rifle standard stock, which is part held against the shoulder, and it frees the weapon and slides back and forth rapidly, harnessing the energy from the kickback shooters and feel like harnesses energy from the kickback shooters feel when the weapon fires. It is illegal to mechanically modify a semi-automatic weapon to make it automatic. External devices used to adapt the guns are legal, but bump stocks are legal. The mass shooting of Las Vegas is a great example of why you should ban the use of bump stocks. The shooter was able to legally acquire all these weapons, including a bump stock accessory. He was able to equip his rifle with one and was able to turn it into a fully automatic weapon. Police also discovered more than 50 pounds of exploding targets and 1,600 rounds of ammunition in Paddock's car in the hotel's parking lot. Police said that Stephen Paddock, the 64-year-old gunman, had outfitted 12 of his firearms with bump stocks, which he used to fire hundreds of rounds to a crowd of 22,000 concert goers Sunday from the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino. While fully automatic weapons are strictly regulated under federal law, bump stocks offer gun owners a relatively easy and cheap way around such restrictions. The devices could be purchased online for little as $100, enable the user to fire hundreds of shots per minute. Representative Seth Moulton, who presented President Trump's moment of silence on Monday, says regulated gun modification devices is one instance where Congress can take action on gun control. This is a great example of a law we could pass that we would have an influence on this tragedy. Moulton tells Young it would have made a big difference if he wasn't able to use automatic rapid rifle fire. He would have killed far few people. The question is, how do we define arms? We already draw the line of what arms are and permitted somewhere. I can go by mortar shells, for example, along the same lines. I don't think it is right to allow civilians to purchase and carry machine guns. The debate is about where the line should be drawn. How much firepower should a single individual be able to own? Not such a black and white issue and needs to be debated. When the second endearment was written, the ability for a single individual to massacre massive amounts of people in a short amount of time did not exist. It exists now. How much firepower should we allow an individual to have? Bump fire stock, or bump stock for short, has been generally considered illegal in California for several years, but is legal federally. The device in the national spotlight after authorities found the Las Vegas shooter, Stephen Paddock had outfitted a dozen semi-automatic rifles and an aftermarket product. And I'm gonna stop right there.
I'm Roman Lawson.
Say your name one more time.
Roman
Okay.
Lawson.
Oh, thanks.
Go.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The issue in today's debate is whether or not banning bump stocks is a rational course of action. The proposition argument was that this ban is a key step to curbing the problem in America's gun violence. This will not do much in curbing the gun violence in America. Ask yourself, Judge, how many of the shooters in the mass shootings of 2017 used bump stocks? One, and only one. The other factors in gun violence far eclipse the problem that the proposition tries to present when they narrow their argument to bump stocks. We need to focus on other factors that contribute because they overwhelmingly address the fundamental causes of gun violence better. Blaming bump stocks will not prevent what is an all too common disaster in American culture. The issue runs deeper than an accessory, and this legislative strategy has unfortunate consequences that make it unsound. So the definition of bump stock is that it's an accessory which increases the rate of fire of a semi-automatic rifle while simultaneously decreasing the accuracy. Our resolution is banning bump stocks fails to address the larger and more pressing issue of gun control in the United States by distracting from the fundamental problems of our gun culture. Furthermore, the ban may lead to a rapid banning of firearms in the United States that would lead to a violent response from right-wing groups such as the militia movement. The first disadvantage to this ban would be it distracts gun problems without fixing anything. In the status quo, bump stocks are legal and you can buy them online or in a store. There also seems to be two mass shootings every month, and that we as a country are in need of a solution to this problem. Banning bump stocks will not solve the serious problem, nor will it curb the rate in which these shootings occur. For instance, though it would be easy to say the Las Vegas shooting is a major example of why bump stocks need to be banned, there is a point to be made, in fact, that bump stocks are not the issue at hand. When looking at mass shootings, when looking at the mass shooting that took place in Las Vegas recently, the reports say the shooter had multiple advantages to his attack than just guns with bump stocks attached. The most important thing you must focus on isn't the accessory on the gun, but other factors that contributed to the person firing the gun's ability to cause mayhem so efficiently. It will punish owners who have gun accessories, which will also be banned, and encourage more supposed hot fixes that do not tackle the actual problem our nation is facing. The alternative issues include a lack of mental health care accessibility and lack of education on available resources, a lack of proper screening procedures for the purchasing of firearms, and a lack of infrastructure to enforce arms ban. The problem of hot fixes like an accessory ban is that they act like a band-aid. They cover up the problem without actually solving the injury underneath and cause us to feel like we've done something we haven't. This feeling delays future action and successful action that can solve a problem because we begin to focus on other things, patting ourselves on the back, for instance. Bump stocks may increase the lethality of the weapon simply by increasing the rate of fire, but what's the deadliest aspect of the Las Vegas shooting incident? The shooter, a man possibly suffering from mental illness, chose to take the lives of more than 50 innocent people. If the shooter had access to a semi-automatic weapon without bump stocks, he would have been able to do the exact same amount of damage. Bump stocks require a holder to stand completely still. What does that mean? Okay. The mass shooters rarely have opportunity to do. The second disadvantage to this legislation is bump stock ban. The bump stock ban would have little effect on bump stocks that are already in circulation and would lead to huge right-wing backlash. The implementation of this ban has been stalled with good reason. It is ineffective and too broad. According to the Washington Post, who listed a proposed ban in its entirety, it would have no effect on bump stocks already bought and sold, and would prohibit the use of any accessories that increase the rate of fire of semi-automatic weapons. What does that mean? Okay. Placing a ban on bump fire stocks and automatic weapons, though the implementation of a blanket policy would generate outrage and unrest throughout the country, from the NRA and gun activists to citizens concerned with home defense.
All
right.
Clarification, I'm clapping when you have 4 minutes left. I'm clapping when you have 1 minute left.
4 and 1. You said you're clapping 4 and 1?
Yeah, and I'm giving nonverbal time signals as well throughout the speech.
I'm Kiana Lane. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. You said that bump stocks are a distraction. How are they a distraction when he literally killed 58 people? It's kind of just adding fuel to the fire. This is just going to get worse. So, at least 12 bump stocks were found along with 47 guns in the hotel room of 64-year-old Stephen Paddock. He is the man that created the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history. Keep in mind that he obtained at least 33 of his guns with the bump stocks legally within a year. Not only has Massachusetts officially prohibited bump stocks, but New Jersey is one step closer to doing the same. On Thursday, New Jersey State Assembly's Law and Public Safety Committee voted 8-0 with 1 abstention, which was a decline to vote, but to advance a Democratic-sponsored bill that would prohibit the sale and possession of bump stocks in the state. The Assemblywoman Annette Quijano, a sponsor of New Jersey, said our law enforcement officials on residents will be in greater danger if they are allowed in New Jersey. And this goes for everyone else. Why should there be a device that allows a legal weapon to...
I just want to clarify that I didn't say that bump stocks were a distraction. I said the ban is a distraction from the real issue of gun control in the United States. That's it. Just want to clarify.
Fine, right. And this goes for everywhere else. Why should there be a device that allows a legal weapon to be modified into a legal machine gun? Stephen Paddock killed 58 innocent people, and he was able to do so because of these bump stock modifications. Like Joseph previously mentioned, to use a bump stock, you simply remove 2 items, which is the stock and the pistol grip of the gun, and then attach the bump stock to the end, and then you have a rifle that operates like a legal weapon. So this gun enabled Stephen Paddock to fire about 100 shots every 10 seconds into the crowd in Las Vegas from his hotel room window. Now, maybe the first step to prohibiting these bump stocks is not to make them so easily available. I personally went onto Google and typed in bump stocks and went to shopping, and it was available to me right there for $100, for $13, for $300 as a range. Investigators are also having trouble tracking bump stocks because they do not have special serial numbers that allow them to track when the devices change hands. So there is no real way of knowing if the use of these devices are intended for recreation or terrorism. Maryland's top legislative leaders are backing a proposal to expand the state's automatic weapons ban in 2018, prohibiting the sale of bump stocks. The House Speaker Michael E. Bush stated there is no reason that bump stocks should exist. Think of the number of people who could have been saved in Las Vegas if there wasn't a bump stock. Senator Bill Ferguson and David Moon.
If you look at the Vegas shooting and the Orlando shooting, if he were to not have those bump stocks, he would have been more accurate and could have killed more people instead of just injuring more people. That was not a better thing, but I would much rather get shot in the arm and live than get shot square blank in the head, because bump stocks do make guns more inaccurate.
Senator Bill Ferguson and David Moon have promised to introduce a bill next year to ban such devices. Maryland has some of the strictest gun laws in the nation, including a 2013 law that bars the sale of nearly all semi-automatic rifles and ammunition magazines that have more than 10 bullets. The proposal from Moon and Ferguson would not prohibit possession of existing bump stocks or the inheritance of such items if they already have been purchased illegally. Moon said banning bump stocks and other devices that make semi-automatic rifles function more like a fully automatic weapon would be a common sense response to uphold the spirit of existing laws in Maryland. Many lawmakers, both the Democratic and Republican, agreed one response to the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history should be to ban the bump stocks, but a month later they are still legal except for Massachusetts and California. So how many more deadly shootings are we going to witness before we find out? How many more innocent people will die before it's too late?
Good. Alright, so I'm gonna mostly try to refute some of the things you guys have said so far, and if I have time left in my argument, I'm gonna get to touching on a new point. So to start off with you guys' opening argument, you said that bump stock would make a gun into a machine gun. First of all, not all fully automatic guns are machine guns. There are other guns that could be in question as far as guns that are semi-automatic, as well as you went into a non sequitur saying that you could take materials and put them together just to create a gun. That's completely irrelevant to the issue at hand. Both of them do cause death, but it's impossible to say that someone could create a bump stock on their own as opposed to just purchasing it online. In addition to that, in your opening statement, you said that the shooter had exploding rounds in his hotel room. It's, like Roman said in his opening statement, it's hard to say that the bump stocks were the reason for the deaths caused, as opposed to things like exploding rounds or other illegal things that the man might have had. No matter what bans are put in place, it's not going to be impossible for people to acquire things that are going to make it easier to cause death. Additionally, it's hard to say whether the death toll in the Las Vegas shooting was due to the bump stocks, just due to the sheer amount of people that were at the country music festival where the shooting took place. There were 22,000 people at the shooting, and the shooter had a vantage point of the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay. So if the shooter had just been in broad daylight standing on the ground among the 22,000 people, it would have been a lot easier for law enforcement to apprehend him and stop him from shooting. The shooting took place from 10:05 p.m. to 10:15 p.m. That's 10 minutes that if he didn't have such a high vantage point, it would have been incredibly easy for someone to take him down. Additionally, this man had 23 guns in his hotel room, 12 of which had bump stocks on them. No matter what, it shouldn't be as easy as it was for the man to bring 23 guns into a relatively highly populated hotel. Excuse me. And then to add to the refutation of the first argument, the man was in possession of an AR-15, which is a legal semi-automatic weapon. If we do ban the sale and use of bump stocks, it's not going to completely prohibit people from having semi-automatic weapons that are going to make it easier for them to cause death. AR-15s are completely legal, they're easy to acquire, like she said in her second speech, just as easy as bump stocks are to purchase online, AR-15s are just as easy. And so to refute the second argument, it's mainly a distraction, not because the bump stocks aren't important, it's definitely an important issue to focus on, but it's also important to focus on the fact that there's other issues. There have been 146 mass shootings in this country since 1966, according to the Washington Post, which could be classified as 4 or more murders by the shooter. So it's not possible to say that this is obviously one of the worst shootings in American history. That's impossible to refute. But this man was not doing something completely unlike what other people are doing. Additionally, just to fact check something you said in your second argument, he did not have 44 guns, he had 23 guns, which either way is a large amount of guns to be able to bring into a hotel room. Moving on, shopping doesn't necessarily make the purchase of bump stocks easier. Yes, if you go to slidefire.com, you can easily purchase a bump stock. It's not a hard thing to do. But shopping is not going to make something easier, as we've all seen throughout our lives. It's easy to acquire illegal things. It's really not that difficult. I'm pretty sure almost everyone in this room has drank alcohol underage, which is completely illegal. And banning bump stocks is not going to take away things like the black market. It's not going to make it it might make it a little bit more difficult, but it's not going to make it impossible to acquire. And like I touched on earlier, the death toll in the shooting, yes, it was 59 people, 500 plus people were injured, but in a crowd of 22,000, I'm not going to say that that was a positive, because obviously the loss of 59 lives and the injury of over 500 people is an incredibly tragic thing. But for 22,000 people, I don't know if, regardless of the ban of bump stocks, any of those people could have been saved. That man was, as Roman touched on in his opening statement, he had the potential for mental illness. It's impossible to say whether he was just a man on a mission willing to murder at all costs, and I think that regardless of the ban, people like him are going to continue doing these things in the future.
I'm Heather. So first off, he purchased everything legally. He didn't go out of his way to actually buy something illegal. So we're talking about the legal side of this. If bump stocks had been illegal, we could have saved a lot of those people's lives. you talk about how the bump stock didn't make a difference between Orlando and Las Vegas, but that's, again, incorrect. You talk about time. In 10 minutes, he had injured more than 300 people and killed plenty, and 58 others. And in Orlando, it was a 2-hour event of the shooting. Like, 2 hours long, this guy was shooting at people. Imagine if he had had a bump stock. All of those people would have been dead. They were stuck inside a room. They couldn't go anywhere. So, considering the two differences, I think bump stocks really did make a huge difference in the Las Vegas shooting. Again, sorry. Whenever the bump stocks were first created, they weren't even sure if it was going to be legal. Congress took a long time to actually sit there and say, I'm not sure, and I don't think they didn't know the effects of a bump stock. Now we do. We realize that after Las Vegas, bump stocks really do cause more people to die in mass shootings. And yeah, it's not gonna stop a mass shooting, but it's gonna limit the number of people who die at one. And it's a step in the right direction. We're starting to ban bump stocks. Maybe we'll ban AR-15s, which is a legal semi-automatic gun that is really easy to switch over to an automatic weapon. Again, the federal law defines a machine gun as a weapon that can shoot more than one round without any trigger help from a trigger. And yeah, the bump stock is actually doing that. It's creating the trigger action. Sorry. It's made the trigger more sensitive because you're not actually doing it. You didn't start pressing the trigger, and that again would make it an illegal weapon then, because it is a machine gun because you're not pulling the trigger. Oh, and again, you said, we did say a 47 gun total amount. We do understand that not all of them were found in the hotel, but he did purchase all 47 of those guns legally. So we're talking about the legal side of things. We know criminals are going to be criminals.
You know he brought them into the hotel?
Huh?
You know he brought 50 guns into that hotel room?
He did not bring 50 guns into the hotel.
You said
I said he brought 23. I was agreeing with what you said, but they found 47 guns that were all in his homes that were all legally purchased. All of them, every single one of them. So if we could do something on the legal side of things, we could prevent a lot of these things from happening. Because also, you talk about the other shootings, like in Newton and Aurora, Colorado. All of those guns, again, were purchased legally. They weren't some guy off the street getting a black market gun and going to decide to do a murder. There's a different, it's different. I think I'm good, Alice. Go for it.
We're talking about the weapons he used in the shooting. So why mention the 47 guns? Like, if I have a traffic ticket, should all my cars get
Well, okay, if you have a traffic ticket, they're probably gonna look at every other traffic ticket that you've had and decide, you're a reckless driver if you have 6 of them. You might just be an accidental driver, an accidental speeder if you have 2 of them, and it's been 5 years. So if you bought 47 freaking guns,
But it has nothing to do with my
no,
other
it
cars.
does. It does.
With my other
Because
cars,
they
if I'm
should
driving
it
a
should
car.
have raised a red flag.
All right. My name's Hayden Washington. So I'll start off with.
All right, you're good.
Good. So I'll start off with refuting some of her claims, and then if I have time, I'll get to our side. So he spent a lot of time talking about the guns that he brought into the hotel room and the guns that he brought legally, but the point of this debate is the ban. You know what I mean? Should the ban go through? You know, should bump stocks not be available for purchase? And I want to get back on that focus. You also said that the shooting in Orlando the shooting in Vegas was a lot worse than the one in Orlando, but you have to think about, in Vegas he was shooting from a vantage point, 30 floors up. In Orlando he was shooting in a nightclub around corners, people were running around. Now, I'm not gonna say that it was worse or not, but no, it's hard. It would be hard to aim if people are running around corners. That's why he was shooting for so long. In the Vegas, he was just shooting at an open area of 20,000 people. You have something to say?
I said that it could have been worse had he had bump stocks, because he had 2 hours in that building where he had just a semi-automatic weapon and was doing that. Had he had a full automatic weapon with a bump stock, like the Vegas shooter did, all of those people would have been dead.
Maybe.
No,
All right.
they would have.
All right. So what Roman said earlier. So the implementation of this ban is stalled for a good reason. I think it's too broad and ineffective. If this ban goes through, it doesn't necessarily get rid of the bump stocks that are already in circulation. It just stops the sale of them. And also, according to the Washington Post, who listed the ban in its entirety, it would have no effect on what's already bought and sold. It would just prohibit any accessory that increases the fire rate of a semi-automatic weapon. Placing a ban on these bump stocks and automatic weapons through a blanket policy would generate outrage and unrest throughout the country, and gun rights activists, from gun rights activists to the NRA, would be upset and cause an uprising. We've seen a lot of uprisings happening, recently in these modern times. If we start to strip rights away from certain people, then you will see resistance and people stand up for what they believe in. It is what Americans do. You see, in Charlottesville, they believed that their way of life was being attacked, and they resisted. Black Lives Matter protests, it swept the nation because people felt like their way of life was being threatened. They resisted, and they aren't going to back down. Given the strength of gun culture in this country, the resistance could be much more violent in this case. So we need a different plan of action involving gun control. I don't think putting this ban is going to affect anything.
You mentioned that it's going to outrage people. In Massachusetts, where she mentioned earlier, they did ban it, and it was out of what everyone wanted. Their constituents wanted it to be banned. I don't think it's going to cause outrage. And you're talking about people getting rid of it. All they have to do.
You're taking one state. And
there's two.
And it's not a right.
Oh, you're taking 2 states and.
They're on their way to doing it, though. They're
Okay.
on their way. People want it.
Okay, 2 states full of people does not represent 50 states of people. I'm telling you, people in Texas feel a whole lot different than people in Massachusetts about guns, and that's a fact. This ban wouldn't. This ban wouldn't apply towards the bump stocks that are already been. Okay, I already said that. Lastly, I see the creation of a slippery slope. This is going to upset many heavily armed individuals, and if this ban were to pass, and God forbid another shooting take place, then what's going to happen next? Would you go after semi-automatic weapons with detachable magazines, higher caliber weapons, scopes, or tripods, all of which are more lethal than a bump stock? At this point, the legislation would affect core Second Amendment rights. Furthermore, without a clear and justified movement to enforce a sweeping arms ban, you only increase the chance of violent backlash while not doing anything to considerably decrease gun ownership or violence in the United States. Good. You got anything?
I can't say anything.
Bet.
You guys brought up some good points.
I know.
But many of them didn't make sense or was very irrelevant. Starting with the point you guys said, if the shooter in Vegas would have had a regular semi-automatic, the same amount of damage would have been done.
No, we didn't say the same amount.
It will.
No, he did say that, by the way. Yeah,
Go ahead.
the same amount of damage would have been done. Actually, which is false. Just like Heather said, if the bump stock increased the amount of fire coming from the weapon, Steph had injured 300 people in 10 minutes, while the shooter in Orlando killed 49 people in 2 hours. So I mean, that shows you right there that the same amount of damage would not have been done, because if he would have had a regular semi-automatic, it probably would have took longer for him to injure all those people if he would have hurt the same amount of people. Another thing he said, putting a ban on bump stocks would make it worse, and actually it will make it worse. Like, hold on, what exactly did you say? Putting a ban on bump stocks will actually make it worse, and so more people like will get them. Like, well, actually. That's true. I mean, there's still the black market and there's still everything else, but it will definitely slow down the rate of how many people of the people getting it. It's not just like everybody knows what a black market is. I can't just like find or call the black market. It will definitely slow down the rate in that aspect. And as I stated earlier, it is illegal to have a fully automatic weapon. So what is a bump stock? A bump stock, you literally put it on your shoulder, and you use the recoil to fire more rounds off. So how is that not a fully automatic weapon? That same thing automatic weapon does. It shoots off more rounds quickly. And another thing you said, which didn't make sense. You said a lot of stuff that didn't make sense. But yeah, I really think everything. I got everything. Like. Bump stocks are really are bad, honestly. Like they really do suck, because it's like you take it says it's illegal, but y'all use this little loophole, whatever, to make the gun. So
I think
what?
we just. Oh, we can.
Yeah, we good.
Okay, we just have to stay on the point. You know, guns kill people. People don't kill people.
So bump stocks don't add to that.
We're not saying that bump stocks don't add. Listen, okay, check it out.
I forgot my point.
Just remember to frame your points in terms of questions. Does that make sense?
Okay, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I've nothing.
No, keep going, because I'm trying to get
Of course
back.
y'all don't. Okay, but yeah. So I really that's all my points. Like you said. Guns kill people, will bump stocks add to that? Just like I can really go back to what Heather said. 300 people in 10 minutes. That's ridiculous. But if he would have had his regular semi-automatic, would have just pew, pew, pew. It wouldn't have got all 300 people. People would have had time to run and like, oh yeah, go ahead. You talk.
Do you have any experience shooting rifles? Do you know how fast you can shoot just with your finger?
Well,
The only thing is what the bump stock does, it just makes it do it for you. You can still shoot just as fast with your finger. If you know how to shoot, you can. Secondly, we're here talking about.
Just make sure you ask a question.
Oh, well, I don't know how to say that in a question, so go ahead. I made my point.
that's irrelevant. Because one, boom, boom, boom. Like it's easy to just use a recoil. Like you don't have to keep moving it. Your points, man. But I think I'm done. That's it. Thank you guys for your time.
Finish him. Face Hadley.
Good afternoon, guys. My name is Musa. I hope all is doing well. First of all, I would like to thank you all for your patience, sitting there peacefully, listening around, the affirmative side arguing to strip you from your rights. I would like to start this closing statement by refuting a point made by the affirmative side in this debate. Starting with the second speaker, he mentioned the Vegas shooter. We all agree that it is a tragedy. But shouldn't the question be, how and why was he allowed to get 27 guns inside the hotel room in the first place? My colleague also argued, they keep on mentioning the 300 people dying in 10 minutes. It was a tragedy. No one would disagree. But as my colleague mentioned, in the Orlando and the Vegas incidents, the situations were different. They had a vantage point, and they were in different situations. He had more weapons. They're not equivalent. And going back to the machine gun argument that the first speaker talked about, he mentioned how you can assemble things to create a bomb, right? Well, pool sanitizers contain hydrogen peroxide, drain removers contain nitric acid, both are common household goods that can be used to create a bomb. So should we ban those two? Since we're doing that. And I would like to rebuild on my first colleague's argument that
Point of interest. You said that. Excuse me. You said that they're different in such a way. So you're saying that if the Orlando shooter would have had a bump stock, it would have been the same amount of damage.
no, what I'm saying, unlike you, I'm not psychic, so I can't tell how many people
So
will
you
die.
don't think it would be worse?
I do not know. Like, if I knew, I'd tell you. And another point I would like to add, building on the point you previously mentioned, is that people kill people. It's not guns that kill people. Because you need somebody to pull the trigger. And as we can see from the stats, over 60% of gun tragedies happen because of suicides. So obviously, this is a mental health issue. This is not an issue relating to bump stocks. So what we should be focusing on is changing the mindset of the people, not stripping them from their rights.
Okay.
You mentioned it's stripping our rights, but it's the right to bear arms, and you keep calling it an accessory, so it's not the gun. So if it's
I do not
just
call it an accessory.
earlier test you guys did.
I didn't.
Okay, well, your argument is, so yes, your side called it an accessory. How does that strip you of your rights if you have the right to bear arms and that only refers to guns?
Yeah, I did not make that point. By no means are we arguing here that violence caused by firearms is not an issue. This is an issue that should not be taken lightly. What my colleagues argued was that the affirmatives are focusing on the wrong issue. And I would like to conclude this closing statement by highlighting how ridiculous the propositions were from the affirmative side, hoping that you could forgive them for wasting your time. Thank you very much.
Oh shit.
Let me turn this off real quick.